I'm currently in Tokyo, Japan with Craig Hutchison, where he's gonna help me and my friend Max design a couple of these ecological approach games from this specific pant and collar situation, commonly referred to as Mad Dog or Crazy Dog, which I've been playing a lot on my own time with my friends, but now I want some feedback from an expert. The ecological approach is a more controversial method of training jiu-jitsu where you don't do any static drilling and instead you just do live work the whole time. Technically, what we're doing here is the constraints-led approach, which is a coaching/training methodology under the umbrella of ecological dynamics. And if you want to learn more about this so-called ecological approach, I have a whole playlist of videos on that, which will be linked in the description. I previously did another video with who I like to call the godfather of the ecological approach, Greg Souders, where he taught me how to design several games, and luckily Craig Hutchison was down to also do the same thing. And I was particularly excited about this because this is the first time an instructor is showing me how to do this in the gi. Craig is a really good black belt and coach. And also, by the way, congrats on your recent win. That was awesome. He's been following the ecological approach and coaching students with it for a while. And after I filmed an interview with him for like 2 hours where we covered everything from his coaching philosophy to more on his understanding of the ecological approach, I asked him if he'd be down to film something when I came to Japan for the Asian Championship. I may release that interview in full if enough people want to see it, so comment down below if you do. We're at Carpe Diem today. I think the neighborhood in Tokyo is called Jiugaoka. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a great gym, by the way. I also have another video where I trained with Soichi Hashimoto, the literal judo Olympian. And if you want to see that, that's right here. And Max is here too. He's a really good purple belt, and I actually competed with him at Worlds like 2 years ago, and I didn't even know it. So this was a cool coincidence. And Max is going to be my training partner for the demonstrations today. In this video, we're going to see me demonstrate how I've been playing this game, and then I'll actually play the game several rounds with Max. During this, we'll get real-time coaching cues from Craig, and then get his feedback not only on my design, but also how he as a coach might tweak things to make them either easier or more difficult, and iterate on the game in a very customized, individual way. And of course, we're gonna play those versions of the game for several rounds. And we'll talk a lot about how we could make this a whole sequence or progression. We'll also go pretty in depth on some of the theory around things like task simplification, this concept of representativeness in jiu-jitsu, some thoughts around spamming techniques and situational sparring, and a pretty interesting part on how to design good win conditions. And just a spoiler here, this is gonna be around how jiu-jitsu is a zero-sum game. There's a whole lot of good stuff I discovered here from Craig, and I hope you too can implement some of this for yourself or for your students. This is just a small part of like a really long 2-hour session that we did where we covered everything from this passing to things like barambolos and lapel guards. So if you want to see more of this session, please let me know in the comments so that I know people want to see it. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe so I know to make more content like this. I'm going to be making a lot more videos going forward. That said, let's get right into it. I think the first one I'll do is this like passing type game, which is there's a situation that I find myself in a lot of the time.
Okay.
So there's that situation where it can either be from lasso or however we get here, but I have this pant grip and the collar grip, and basically just starting from here and trying to get a chest-to-chest connection. So as the top player, my goal would be like with these two grips, finding some way to get chest to chest, or if he bellies down, get chest to back, and then his goal is to get both of his feet back in front of me.
Right.
And that's one of the games that we've been playing. So like right off the bat, what do you think about that?
So you have a clear endpoint for yourself, which is chest to chest or chest to back, and also for the bottom player, which is feet back in front of the top player. So that's always good because having clear defined goals, I think, is really important in the constraints-led approach. How I like to make the game with basically like, what are you trying to maintain and what are you trying to attack or progress? So if you use those two words, like I think Greg, he uses intention and attention.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar. Like, what are you trying to maintain in this position?
Yeah.
Like, if you tell me no.
What I want to maintain, I don't want to move like backwards. Like I don't want to go back from the position I'm in. So I want to maintain. First of all, I feel like these grips are good because I can be able to separate his knee and his elbows, so I can open up that space to pass there. So that's kind of what one of my focuses, I think, is keeping that separation. So as he's constantly trying to bring his knee back in, I'm constantly trying to keep that separated so that I can keep that open. And with the intention of like using my body to get around this leg or pressure into this leg and get him flat so I can get chest to chest. So really focusing on like getting around that top leg, I think.
So you described it well. As a coach, like what I would try and say when explaining this to a class, but I'll try and use as few words as possible.
Yeah.
So basically what you described is distance.
Okay.
So what you're trying to maintain is close distance.
Oh, okay.
Right? So you want to use like really short cues for the people so they don't have to think a lot. And during the round, if I say distance to you, now that triggers everything you just said with one word.
Interesting.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So what you're trying to maintain, close distance. What you're trying to attack would be the chest to chest or the chest to back.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? And then from there, once you observe the rounds, then you can start using different cues. So maybe the distance was good. Well, we'll see in a second.
Yeah.
Maybe the distance is good, but another problem comes up, and then you can start thinking of another cue for them to focus on. Okay. But I think the design of the game is good. Like you have clear start and end points. You just need to see what happens from there, basically.
Got it. Can you can we play the game real quick and you coach me through it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Keep going, keep going. Good. Switch. So I think a game with clear start and end points, it's good to flip-flop each time because you'll learn from each other this way. Yeah. And you can basically bounce ideas off each other without talking about it.
This video's member shout out is Kenny Cho. Thanks for joining the YouTube channel. As a member of the YouTube channel, you get access to exclusive videos that aren't available to the general public. These same exact videos also exist on my Patreon if you prefer the Patreon platform, and the link for that is in the description. Thanks, Kenny, and thank you to all the other members of the channel and on Patreon. Your support means the world to me. In the starting position, should I pick if I want to have this frame in a specific place, like my foot, for example?
If you're using this game for your own training and you have a specific issue of, for example, the sole of the foot is always on your shoulder, yes.
Okay.
However, if it's more of a general game for the class, I wouldn't be too specific with what that frame is. I would just recommend create a connection with the top leg. It could be your knee, it could be your foot, it can be your shin, just any connection. But if you always face the same problem, it's always the knee shield or it's always the shallow lasso, then start with that one.
Okay. So if you were doing this kind of more generically, would you tell the bottom players in the class to just frame somewhere with their foot? And
I would advise them to make a connection with their top leg.
Okay. Got it.
If that's not enough information for them, I can tell them examples like foot, knee, for example. But that depends on your room. If it's a beginner, I will probably tell them okay, place your knee. If it's a more advanced room, I'll just tell them, okay, make a connection with your top leg.
Got it. Okay.
Keep the distance. That's it, that's it. Keep going, keep going. Chest. Don't forget your objective. Good.
Oh, that was cool. You just completely switched sides.
Yeah.
I don't want to do something else.
I did the same thing. Not this time.
No, that's interesting though.
Because you won. You got back in front. So I switched sides.
Got it. Would we, is that a valid win condition for the bottom players to get the feet back in front?
Yeah. I don't think you recovered your feet.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I recovered either, which is why I thought it was interesting that you still switched sides. Yeah.
As a coach, if I'd stopped the drill there, it would have been a waste.
Yeah.
I think. Because you won't learn your combinations of your pass and you become tunnel vision on just one side.
Yeah.
And now you're thinking, oh, I can do the same thing and go the other side.
Exactly, that's what I was
As long as you don't get caught up in the feet, right?
Right.
Because what he did was he maintained close distance while switching sides.
Right.
If he'd given distance, then you would have got the feet back in front.
Right.
So he was always thinking about what he wants to maintain whilst still attacking his objectives. So, yeah,
right.
good.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go. One more time. So if I'm teaching like in a small group scenario like this, if the game ends super quick, I'll oftentimes give them another chance. Basically, yeah. So, okay, and again, good. Keep the distance. Forwards, forwards, forwards. Good. Okay. There we go. Good. Distance, 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 distance. Good. Distance. Keep the distance, keep the distance. Time. Okay. So it was unsuccessful, but there was lots of good stuff there. And I think, Josh, like he made you work quite hard there.
Very hard, yeah. Yeah. But actually the interesting thing that I think I got from that was I was trying to do on bottom what you did to me on bottom, which was like fighting harder to get my bottom knee back closer to close that connection, the elbow knee connection, and also by like pulling on that hand that you had like on the pant grip. Because I think before when I was on bottom, I wasn't actually actively trying to keep that space closed. Whereas I realized when he was doing that to me, it was giving me a much harder time on top to pass. So I thought that was an interesting thing there.
So from like a game design perspective, if I was to progress this, I would first look at like how successful you were. So Max was quite successful, you were a little less so.
Yeah.
So I would make the game easier for you to make it more, give you more success.
Okay.
So the main issue was this top frame.
Yeah.
Right? And that was stopping you from closing the distance and also opening him up. So I would just take this frame out of the equation and give you a couple rounds of success of doing the last like 30% of this game.
Interesting.
Because you were starting like this. I don't know if it's gonna. Is this all right? I don't know. You were starting here, and like this was giving you too much problems that you couldn't basically get a win.
Yeah.
So I would start with no top frame.
Or just completely removed, or just like not hooking?
It's up to you. You can start past, or you can start already with the distance closed. But I would take this out of the equation because this was like from watching it, what I identified was this was the main issue.
Right.
Like you were talking about the bottom leg,
Yeah.
but he's only able to bring this back in because he can maintain distance with this.
Interesting. Okay.
So I would give you a couple rounds without this top frame. Feel how you can be tight. Feel how you can create this space here and keep the close distance and get your objective. Then I would bring this back in.
Okay.
Because a lot of times, once you can feel the end position,
Yep.
if you take one step back, a lot of times like you'll self-organize around getting to that position.
Yeah, because you feel like you know what strong position you're trying to get
Exactly,
to.
yeah.
I've
You're familiar with
noticed that
where
as
you're trying
well.
to get to.
Right.
It's easier to know like how, if I say go over there, like you know where to go. If I say keep walking till I say stop, it's a bit more ambiguous.
Right.
So
okay.
let's try again.
Okay.
I want you to remove this top frame or start past the top frame, okay? And then see if you can win.
Okay.
Is this how you finished first round? The first time you passed, it's because you beat this frame.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
It's hard for you as well because you're seeing it from a first-person perspective. If you have someone watching, you can see that that's the main issue for you right now is the top frame.
Yeah.
So you can choose how you want to start.
Okay.
Close the distance. Okay, so you've beaten that top frame.
Yeah.
Same objectives, different starting position.
Okay.
Okay, let's go. Good. Cancel out that top frame. Don't let that top frame come in. Keep the distance close. Keep going. Keep going. Good.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you're confident that once you get past that top frame, you can finish.
Right.
Okay. So like now, this needs to be where the attention is, the top frame, beating the top frame.
Right, right. Okay, I see.
And like that's where the techniques come in, right? There's like 100 techniques of how to do that, but it's going to be different every time based on what he's doing. So Max's idea of being the top frame was he switched sides.
Right.
You can try that because it worked on you,
Yeah.
but you can also try going under the frame, deflecting the frame, all sorts of things. You're starting with the frame now?
With the frame this time.
No, go without the frame. Go past the frame.
Okay, let's go. I'm gonna start a little bit farther though. Okay. All right, ready?
Okay, focus on that
I'm trying
frame.
to get the frame back in now. Okay.
Yeah,
So,
ready, let's go. Focus on that frame. Keep going, keep the distance, keep the distance. Keep going, distance. Don't back away. You're good. He's suffering here. Be patient. Good. So you both came to the same endpoint through different methods. So both of you struggle with this top frame. Can you go down? So he did get the top frame back in.
Yeah.
So Max's way of getting rid of this frame was to go behind it. Your way of getting past that frame was to go around it to where this frame is no longer effective.
Right.
Okay? So again, it's like the same answer, different methods.
Right.
So that's what you want, is like, if you can keep repeating the same solution, it's good. But eventually you're gonna hit a wall, right?
Right.
So like, how many times can you repeat a solution until you need to find a new one?
Right. Okay.
And at your level of blue belt, you can probably get away with like, keep hitting the same solution. But that's what's fun about jiu-jitsu, is the more you go up the ranks, the more solutions you need.
Right. Okay.
And the more different problems you're gonna encounter from each position.
Okay. I think my head's spinning right now with all the different. Okay. This makes a lot more sense, because I was like, I was kind of noticing that same thing. Like, we were doing these different like armbar games and stuff, and especially so like the ankle lock. Like the ankle lock is a move that I feel like once I get to a certain position, I'm really confident that I could either finish the actual ankle lock or finish a sweep. So like I know what that position feels like, right? Like I know when it feels strong. So I do everything I can to get to that position. So I think the thing that really clicked, like in this example, is if you know that strong point that you want to get to, then you basically organize around like removing every obstacle to getting to that like strong position, I think.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. Then to like match this, once you're confident in the finishing, because if you're not confident in finishing whatever position or whatever task you're on, like you don't have an incentive to go there.
Right.
So once you get confident doing this, like I would start to create games on getting to those positions. So then I would start from like a seated position, and it was more of like, when you get to the start position of the game you just did, that's when the game finishes. So you kind of make two games of the end part and the beginning part. Yeah, so right now I have no connection. The game you just played, you had your best connections. You were beating the frame.
Right.
Yeah, so the game that we were just playing, we were starting from your preferred position. Did you say you like getting to this position in sparring?
Yeah.
And you're feeling the success of finishing, to getting past the legs basically, which is what you want to do in jiu-jitsu. So then I would create games for you, not for a whole class, for you specifically, is how can I get to my strong position from the common positions. So where does jiu-jitsu normally start? Is going to start from here.
Right.
Okay, so I can make, his condition is just continuous.
Yeah.
Would be to stay in front of me, for example. My condition would be once I get my preferred grips.
Okay.
So I want to spend as long as I can getting to here in a match.
Got it.
Right? So the quicker I can get to my preferred position is taking the match to where I want to be, the better.
Interesting.
So then if I can get used to, with a variety of opponents, getting to my preferred position, I can always funnel the game into where I'm comfortable.
Right.
Which is what you want to do.
Right.
As opposed to just walk into a guard and kind of be like, oh, I'll see what I'm given.
Right. Okay. What do you think that idea of like so one common like critique, let me see if I can articulate this. One common critique of like positional sparring that people talk about is like, the instructor might show a bunch of techniques, and then you get to the positional sparring round and then try to spam those techniques. And then you basically just start trying to force things that aren't there. So how do you differentiate funneling to a position that you're strong in like that versus like spamming techniques? Because I feel like there's a nuance there.
Yeah, for sure. Depends on the wind conditions, right?
Yeah.
Like if Max decides to shell up on one side, like go on like this, okay, it's obvious that there is a much more opportunity on that side, right? So like if I was designing the game, I would have to design it with an, what's the word? Like a matching win condition that would complement an opposite movement. So if I'm attacking heavy on this side, what did Max discover? Going behind to this side was a good option. So I would first allow you to encounter that, like, oh my God, I'm just trying to spam this move, and I'm encountering like lots of resistance. Then on the next round, I would give you another cue of like, okay, one more win condition is get behind the legs, for example.
I see.
Because right now you're still in front of the legs.
Right.
But if you can switch sides and get behind the legs, that could be another win condition.
I see.
So it's basically,
I see.
This works when you're coaching like 2 people.
Yeah.
Because I only have to fix one problem at a time. If you coach a class, everyone's going to have lots and lots of different problems.
Right. This makes sense, yeah. So you're not forcing, okay, yeah, because I think what's happening when we're talking about like spamming a technique is like trying to force like one specific movement without necessarily thinking about the objective you're trying to accomplish. Whereas like this idea that you said about trying to just accomplish the objective of getting like those grips and then getting chest to chest or like chest to back going around the other side or whatever, you're focusing on accomplishing an objective rather than forcing a specific solution to get to that objective, I think, which is what it sounds like the difference might be that you're talking about. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Other ways you can manipulate it was like, if I tell you what your goals are without telling him what your goals are.
Okay.
Because if he knows that you need to get those grips, it's very difficult for you to get those grips, right? So I can tell you, like, hey, Josh, I want you to do this. I'm not going to tell him. And I'll tell him, Max, I just want you to stay square with your opponent. This is much more realistic.
Right.
Another problem with, like, you show 3 techniques, then you do position sparring. Everyone sees the techniques that happens. Everyone knows what's coming. It's like,
And they try to permit those specific.
Exactly. It becomes much more difficult to incorporate anything.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is a good starting point for doing more specific games that like off yourself. So if you have like time at open mat, you can kind of make games like this. And I think the main thing that I wanted to like convey here was that try to use games that give you success.
Right.
Like I think some of the games are actually, they start too difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's really that idea of, they talk about that dial of, or like task simplification.
Yeah.
Right? So starting, if you're not having success with the games, then we can turn the dial down a little bit at first and then start having success and then like increase the variability, which in this case would be like him being able to have a specific frame in place.
It's a fine line. Like you want some failure, you want them to encounter problems. Otherwise it's easy and they're not engaged, right?
Right.
But if they're having 0 success, it's not really encouraging at all. And it doesn't reinforce any behaviors.
Right. You just get frustrated. Okay. Did you have any thoughts on that?
If you keep trying to do like the forcing things and doing the techniques that you show, it just turns into positional training, right? Like, which is fine sometimes, right? But if you want to keep progressing and like succeeding and getting better timing and techniques, you have to take away some things and just accept that it's not going to be positional training and you're developing separate skills from just positional training,
Yeah, otherwise there's no constraints.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not constraints-led approach.
Yeah, like if we just start going for Mad Dog all the time, it's just going to turn into sparring, You have to start taking away things or doing things.
I think the biggest takeaway that I personally had from this session was the idea of task simplification. This, along with task representativeness and other key concepts, are detailed heavily in the book Constraints-Led Approach by Ian Renshaw et al. How do you say that? E-T-A-L, other authors. I highly recommend reading those books. I have these books on my Amazon storefront and the link is in the description, so if you want to support the channel, you can use that link to purchase 1 or more of those books for yourself, and I'll get a small commission. Thanks in advance for the support. Craig also at the end mentioned this concept of getting frustrated, which I think is a very common experience that we all share during jiu-jitsu at some point. And this is referred to as the green, amber, and red zones, also in that Constraints-Led Approach book, which is another great concept. Again, highly recommend reading all these books. The link for my Amazon storefront is in the description. Another good concept that I want to point out here is when Craig was describing this idea of matching win conditions. I think it was Greg Souders who I first heard term this concept as jiu-jitsu being a zero-sum game, which means that what is good for me should be bad for my opponent and vice versa. So I think that's a really good guidepost for determining how you design win conditions for your games. You can ask yourself the question, is the attacking player's win condition bad for the defending player and vice versa. I think that's a good rule of thumb to go by. Like I said, I'm totally down to release more segments of this full 2-hour session that we did with Craig and Max, where we covered everything from passing to barambolos, lapel guard, de la hiva. So if you want to see that, comment below, because if enough people do want to see that, I'll for sure put those out. It's just a lot of editing to do, but I'm happy to do it if you want to see it. Thanks so much again for watching and supporting the channel. And if you haven't seen it already, here's the previous video I did with Greg Souders where he helped me design games for Nogi. Catch you in the next one.